Hey, how's it going? At Paint Pals, we wanted to know what is the best primer. In order to answer that question, we decided to go out and buy the top of the line primers that were available in our area from the different manufacturers. It's not that surprising. What we found is they all act a little bit differently and have unique different properties. So depending on what you're trying to achieve would dictate which primer to use. So if you have a project that's coming up and you're wondering about that, feel free to give us a call or even have one of our estimators come out and quote the project and explain to you the pros and cons of different primers and what we found with our series of experiments. But to get some good information out there for a DIY homeowner that's looking to paint a project coming up, I feel like one of the most common things is you're gonna be trying to paint something that was previously stained and has some kind of clear gloss finish over it, whether that be a lacquer or some kind of polyurethane. I definitely would strongly recommend not just painting it. I know some paints will say they're a paint and primer in one, but you might run into bonding issues and the paint will tend to rub off over time. So you're definitely going to want to use a primer, and for best results, do a light scuff sand. But I was even surprised at how well these primers bonded without a scuff sand. I would recommend doing that if you want best results, but in order to test them and try to get an idea of which primer was the best, we even did a little experimenting when we didn't sand just to see what would happen. And these two primers in particular outperformed the rest and did exceptionally well, better than I actually would have just thought with my original hypothesis. So if you're doing a DIY project and you're got a chair or something you're looking to paint, I would recommend using one of these two primers for the first step, just to make sure you have a good outcome. This is called Extreme Bond Primer from Sherwin-Williams, and this is called a bonding primer, and it's from Behr. You can get this at Home Depot. If you read them, you'll see it's like, designed for tile glass, glossy finish, like what I'm showing here, metal. The Extreme Bond Primer, again, it's in the name. It's saying, hey, for things that you normally have a hard time having something stick to that's real slick and smooth, this primer is specially designed for that, as well as that primer. And like I said, I was blown away by the results. I've seen firsthand if you just paint over a clear coat or even use cheaper like Kills primer or something over a clear coat. Usually you can go up there with your fingernail and scrape it off rather easily, but surprisingly with these newer primers that they sell today, you won't have to worry about that and you'll get a good solid bond on whatever you're painting. So let me explain the experiment I've set up here. We took a bunch of cabinet doors that have a glossy finish on them, where typically something like paint would have a hard time sticking to this, and we applied different primers and even some paints to 3 different sections of each of these doors. We did a no sanding section where we just applied the primer, a light sand where we did a real light sand, and then a full sand. Now, we applied this 38 days ago. Today is day 39, so it's had plenty of time to cure and dry. Most of the primers we used had a very short cure time. However, some of the paints we used did say allow up to 30 days to cure, so I wanted to make sure, gave it plenty of time to cure so we could get some good results. Obviously, this isn't the most scientific way of experimenting, but I think it'll do the job for our purposes today. So I'm just gonna run through each one of these and start scraping the primer and see what happens. We'll list the paints as I'm doing that, but I tested different manufacturers, Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore, PPG, we got some Behrs and some Kills in there, and then the top of the line paints from there as well. So we'll just start right here with this guy, Sherwin-Williams Extreme Bond Primer. I'm gonna readjust the camera angle and then I'm gonna get to scraping and see how it performed. I'm guessing there was less gloss on this side than here, because even though this wasn't sanded, the paint is sticking better on this side here than it did over here. And it definitely seems to be sticking best where we're really sanding it over here. Alright, so that's Sherwin-Williams Extreme Bond Primer. One other note I will make is that the tannins from the wood, that yellow color, it did come through well on here. So it obviously did a great job bonding, which you'd think Extreme Bond Primer, that's its main purpose. In terms of a stain blocker primer, I wouldn't say it was the best. We'll compare the others, but it did a great job of making things stick. Even where I didn't sand, you can see I can't really scrape that off, which is way better than what I was expecting. Again, another Behr primer, and it is leaving scuff marks, which the other primers do not do. I want to go back to this first one, the Sherwin-Williams Extreme, because it did not really scuff, which is great. I just want to make sure like heating up of the scraper or something like that wasn't causing the scuffing. So it does look like it's starting to get scuff marks a little bit more. So maybe just the heat from this scraping a bunch of stuff made it scuff a little, but it's not nearly as bad as like those Behr primers. All right, now I'm going to do a real methodical test, which I like to call the fingernail test, because generally on a job site, if I'm worried about adhesion issues, this is what I'll do is I'll throw some product on there, and then I'll go against the grain with my fingernail and see if it wants to come up. And if I were to have tested this with the Extreme Bond, I would say no. It is sticking. And the way I would normally test, I know it's really methodical, I would say that's a good adhesion. Here's the Behr bonding primer. And that actually sticks. That is not like, the kills compared to this is a big difference. So this definitely, at least for this substrate, way better than the kills. You can see this scuffs really easy. You're gonna cover it with paint, so is that an issue? I don't think so. Where this Extreme Bond primer, right? I mean, it came off a little bit here, but it looks pretty good there. This bonding primer, none of it actually really came off, but it got dark, like it got like really scuffed up, which is weird. I don't know what to really make of it. I mean, if you're gonna cover it in paint, that's fine. This one actually seems to be sticking the best. It's almost indistinguishable from this Extreme Bond primer, but we can see we've got a little bit of it coming off. I mean, I really have to scrape with my fingernail and I can get a little bit off. Let's go against the grain. I mean, it's sticking really good. That is sticking really good too. If I like try to gouge the wood, I mean, I can definitely gouge it. I can't really get the primer off. If I had to pick a winner, I would say this Behr bonding primer. But that's not fair. The only reason I say that is to like scrape it off like this is harder on this guy, and I really have to gouge the wood more, where I can get like it to kind of come up with a lot of pressure and kind of wiggling back and forth. I can get it to kind of come off, where here let's get this flat. It doesn't want to, but the downside is it's marking it up. It's like scuffing it. I kind of can, but it's definitely not coming up. I mean, again, tie, but if I had to pick one, that's the one I would pick for best adhesion.